I think we're just going to be mindful that we're trying to create affordable housing. A 6-star is 3,500 for 157 squares. 7-star jumps to 27,000, so it's not like a small step. It just goes up in a massive steep curve. So a 6-star green rating is, I think, pretty good.
No, it's not in that chapter at the moment, but
Can I comment on this?
we could, comment.
When we researched and put together the proposed regulatory changes for the central city area, obviously just after the earthquakes and around 2011, 2012, we included in that, did a bit of research and with Tony Moore once again, and included in that a standard called, or an assessment process called BASE, which is once again an external assessment process. We feel that we got that to a workable level, and that was included in our recommendations to the central city, to Sarah. But I understand that they were not.
That's right.
And certainly they weren't, but they weren't carried through by Sarah. So in our view, it's possible, but Sarah have been resistant.
But just in terms of the commercial buildings, that group that was Cafe, whatever it is now, are assisting with, and ECA is putting money into, in terms of making them energy efficient. Wouldn't it be better just to say, actually, guys, you've got to be?
Well, that's a decision for this council to make, whether it wishes to include a type of standard like this into the industrial/commercial chapter as well.
Yep, I'd be keen.
Well, the industrial chapter is coming back to you, and Mark's also the author of the commercial chapter, so we can discuss that with him when he comes back.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so what are we on now?
Okay, retirement village standards.
Retirement villages. Yes, I think I opened a little earlier with there being a small but vocal feedback on retirement villages. These being from retirement village operators and their and I guess you'd call it their governing body. They've been very supportive of the approach that has been proposed in terms of enabling retirement villages in all residential zones as a restricted discretionary activity. They recognise that it is probably the most pragmatic and best way to address and look at the issues of the construction of retirement villages. They have, however, pointed out that there are some of the standards that we put out for consultation were problematic to them, in terms of they didn't suit the built form for retirement villages. So since then, I've gone through and over the last few days tweaked some of those standards, and it might be a good idea to direct you to those and talk through them now if we can. So if we go to page 31, and it's at the top, it's under the rule that starts on the preceding page at 14.2.3.4, site coverage. And we've added at the bottom of the table at 5 residential villages a maximum building site coverage of 40%. Originally, we had it at just the standard for the zone and the resident. This is for the residential suburban zone of 35%. But as the submissions or the feedback from the retirement villages organisations pointed out, that their buildings tend to be built at a higher density. Yeah, they've requested that it be that we increase it. They didn't specify how far, so I've put it to 40% at this stage. And we could put that out for public notification and get comment. Comfortable with 40?
This has basically been a really contentious issue in some neighbourhoods where you've got special amenity areas, and what happens is all the old houses get built up and then they get this huge level of development that just totally dwarfs the local neighbourhood. So why would we increase it?
In the sense that, well... That is correct. It is increasing the number of, potentially increasing the number of actual residential units or retirement units that could come onto the property. But in terms of, we recognise that special amenity areas are a concern. We're looking to, at a very thorough review, as I understand it, the special amenity areas in the coming second phase of the district plan review. As it stands at the moment, I don't think that that this restricted discretion could or should sit over those SAM areas as well. But at the same time, these rules will become, as I understand it, they all become operative together with the SAM changes.
No. Whatever is made operative once the decisions are released and there are no appeals, that we will say exactly which parts of the operative plan then fall away, and these will replace them.
Yeah, L2 I'm talking about suburban residential.
Do you think it'd be worth, like, in a residential area, limiting the scale of a retirement village?
Yeah, I know, but...
Excuse me?
Like, do you think, based on what we've seen, that there's a case to kind of limit the scale rather than increase it in terms of local neighbourhood amenity, character, residential coherence?
No, this is about site coverage. Perhaps Eakin might like to comment, but in terms of the in the suburban residential zone, not the overlay zone, in the suburban residential zone, it's an increase from 35 to 40. So.
If they're doing more than one story. So at the moment, operative plan in the suburban residential, which is currently named L1, our lowest density zone, you can build 35% site coverage. But if you're only single story, you can do 40% site coverage already. So if you were doing single story development, 40% is already allowed at the moment. And as part of the review, we are actually proposing to not have that bonus for single story, because we think cumulatively that adds to our impervious areas and other problems. So that would not be increasing it from what they can do now in that zone.
I guess what I'm kind of asking is, like, if you looked at what we've allowed, do you think the scale in terms of the impact on local neighbourhoods is a positive or a negative? And is that, I mean, I can visualise some that I've driven past, but is there any kind of, learning from what we currently have allowed versus where we kind of want to go?
Yeah, in terms... Sorry, also, sitting beside, these are not permit, they are standards, but the actual consenting of the retirement village itself is restricted discretionary for urban design, on urban design, and what else have we got in there? And scale of activity matters as well. So when we assess the resource consent, or the planners assess the resource consent, they'll be looking for its fit with the existing area, and they'll be looking for its urban design features that reduce its, I guess, the effects on the area it's coming into. Yeah.
About the assessment criteria, please. No, I've asked them to tell you what the assessment criteria are for these restricted discretionary activities.
So if you come in for a restricted activity, discretionary activity, And in this case, for retirement villages in a low density suburban area, so one of the things you get assessed by is the urban design assessment matters. And the urban design assessment matters look at 5 key things, but they're actually about 3 key things. What we look at is the scale relative to the neighbourhood. So is that appropriate to the neighbourhood context? The other layer that we look at is this contributing to the street it's on? So you're quite right that something really large in scale amongst a very fine-grained residential neighbourhood would probably not be in keeping with that. So we would ask for evidence of mitigating that. Perhaps it's a large, so the way to do it might be that perhaps it's a large development, but it is organised as if it was just a pocket of the existing suburban area. So there are ways to mitigate that. Just the fact that one party is developing it doesn't mean it needs to be one big building. And the other third layer, the key layer of urban design assessment is on-site amenity. So we look at the neighbourhood fit, we look at your contribution to the street, and we look at your on-site amenity, which includes landscape and entries and legibility, all of those urban design things that we actually talked about this morning.
Yeah, sorry, and if I can just add as well, the retirement villages would also be subject to the prevailing height limits and height recession planes for the zone in which they'd be located. So if there was in a suburban residential zone, if it was 8 metres in height, the height limit was 8 metres in height, then the height limit for the retirement village would be 8 metres. If it was in residential medium density, where the height limit is
9 plus 2.
9 plus 2, then that would apply to the residential the retirement villages as well.
We have half an hour, so I'm hoping that we can finish this in that time. Who's speaking to is that you? Sarah?
Talk quickly to convenience retail. If you can turn to page 25 of the draft standards. Page 25 of the draft standards.
Could you move seats so that we can hear Sarah, please?
Around here, Sarah.
So 25 of the draft standards. Draft residential, yes. Page 25, sorry. RD10, it says convenience retail activity. What we've proposed is that they're restricted discretionary, but to be located on the corner of a minor arterial that intersects with either another minor arterial or collector road. The limitation regarding that is when we looked at all the potential sites, if we didn't limit it to those sort of busier roads, and of course away from impacting more local streets, was that potentially around the city we could get over 700 sites that may, if it was broadened beyond that. At the moment, I think you've got a map in front of you provided where it's got lots of
It's
green
with the green
stars.
stars on it along the roads.
So cumulatively, we thought that by restricting it to minor arterial, minor collector, those intersections, it provides a adequate opportunity for new convenience retail activity.
With dairies and little shops anywhere. I noticed that they're just allowed on corners, which is why I suppose they're always on corners. But the concern I have is in those areas where there are none, and Aidenfield is my favourite hate example of a lack of commercial shops. Does this actually provide for any of that, given that none of those roads will be classified potentially as minor arterial? So you've got whole subdivisions going in without the ability to get a paper or a bottle of milk. That's my concern.
Now, all new greenfield development is slightly different here, because all new greenfield development provides for business zones. I understand what happened with Aidenfield, has some history, but all new greenfield areas, they have planned commercial areas that provide those local dairies.
No, they are required through the regional policy statement. Through an ODP, we've talked about outline development plans. They are required to indicate where a number of things are to go.
What this provides for is really the existing urban area, some additional ability within the existing urban area to provide some convenience retail. So where you might see this being taken up might be within, we haven't overlaid this with the medium density areas, but that's an example of where this may be taken up.
Can you just recap again on the change which has been made that you were talking about? There would have been an ability for 700 of these shops to establish.
Oh, there was never an ability for 700 of these. What we looked at, the options we looked at when this was brought to you or mentioned, I wasn't here for the previous workshop, but it was sort of put forward as being something to provide for. We looked at the options of whether we should limit it in terms of, you could go a free-for-all, I suppose, of allowing convenience retail activity anywhere, because I'll just take you down to B, which is 40 square metres, which limits it to that's public floor area, so that's a small dairy, or it's actually quite conservative, 40 square metres. You could actually go up to 50 square metres of public floor area. I was just going to speak to that next, but broadly about where to provide these, the first issue was, should we provide for them everywhere? Should we limit it to certain roads, certain intersections? And so this was an attempt to, I suppose, confine or limit it to certain roads that we think would be more appropriate for such activity. So that's why we've put the first criteria, I suppose, is the minor arterial intersecting with minor or collectors. Because if you add major in there, you start getting conflicts with major arterials, which are, can be too busy for these types of activities. If you add local roads in there, you get over 700 odd potential, and that has a cumulative effect in terms of retail distribution and...
I agree with the approach. Okay. I was going to comment on the floor space, because I do think that 50 square metres would be far more appropriate than 40. And I mean, of course, the other thing to bear in mind is there's a commercial reality behind all of this. Nobody is going to put one of these shops where it's not going to be a commercial success, and nobody's going to put one of these shops on a major arterial road where there's no parking provided for outside the shop anyway. So, I agree with the approach. The only thing I was going to say was the 40 square metres is too potentially too small.
That is absolutely on the conservative side. I was going to raise that we can take it probably 50 is more appropriate.
And this is an activity that I believe we want to encourage. Yep. This is about having a local shop where people can bump into each other. It's what makes a neighbourhood, it's what makes a community, and it's what stops people getting in their car and driving to the shopping mall or another area.
No, for public floor area, I'm not talking about behind the counter, not talking about the, it's just that if your local hairdressers is probably about 40, 50, certainly your dairy would be. Anything bigger than that, you could go up to 60. You're starting to get quite large floor space then. It's just the public floor space.
It's just your local convenience. So, as you say, hairdressers, takeaways, corner dairies, that kind of thing.
But I was told in the new subdivision, Horseway area, they kind of retail shop around the 200 square meters. So is that situation or not?
That's not. No, that is a
not
business
true, not
zone.
true.
That would be a business zone.
That's
okay.
That's the key activity centre.
Yeah, those are key activity. Quite different scale. Here we are just talking about convenience retail.
Local neighbourhood
Yeah,
shops.
but I still have a question. If a convenience shop, because recently currently the shopping mall in Horseway area, as you are aware, there a supermarket will be the expansion, So but one of the current, their kind of dairy shop, the supermarket food staff, the management talked to him, not allow continue to running the business because no place for him, but refer him to the some other area like a key activity center, maybe either north of Hoswell or Hoswell Junction, that area. But he told me that because no suitable place, because why either the size too big, 200 square meter, or no other location can give him permission continue running his dairy shop. So why have this kind of situation?
Well, this standard is providing opportunity for that activity to occur. Still, as a restricted discretionary activity, it's still important that the council has consideration of matters of urban design, scale of activity again. The hours of operation can be concerned to local residents and traffic generation, access and safety.
But the north, the Hoswell new subdivision, I mean key activity center, they should have a 40 square meter dairy shop, am I right?
Not necessarily, because it's considered a key activity centre. It's a higher level, bigger scale activity centre. It's not your local shops. While people can walk to it, so it might be their local shop, it's actually of a different scale and nature altogether.
So it's not...
No. It has different rules, and those rules are in the commercial chapter. We've been over that chapter with you. Different hierarchy. Yep. I was talking about this one. Now, can I just check?